Masks throughout history tend to be super creepy, and with creepy artifacts, curses tend to come along more often than not. So today we're covering King Tut, Mickey Mouse gas masks, and some more general ghosties. Question for you, what's your take on creepy weird masks? Let me know in the comments and let's get into today. So we're gonna kick things off with a newspaper clipping that was put in a Florida fanzine called Florida Mat Wars. It's like a zine, you know, like really fun. This was in February of 1987. So a picture of Maurice Tillet, better known as the French Angel, was included with the article with the following caption: "Pro wrestler came back from the dead to play chess with a pal." Now, Maurice was a grotesquely deformed professional wrestler with the soul of a poet who could speak 14 languages. Now, he passed in 1955, but here we are. 25 years later, American businessman Patrick Kelly is claiming to have played chess with him from beyond the grave. So before he had passed away, the two guys had often played chess in the businessman's home, you know, just hanging out. Now, these ghostly games began after Kelly bought a computerized chess set. Now, the businessman always played on his library desk, where a plaster cast of, well, our buddy's face just stood. Now, late one evening, the computer deviated from its programmed plays and used an 18th century opening, which was invented by a French master, a play that Maurice had used constantly. Kelly recalled, I played up the game, and next morning realized the computer wasn't plugged in. Now, I thought nothing of it at the time, but a few weeks later, the computer suddenly used a similar opening, and once again, it was not plugged in. So Kelly had the engineers, check the system, and they found the computer would operate without electricity as long as this death mask was near. Now, the businessman had the mask x-rayed for concealed electronic devices, but it was solid plaster. So Kelly says, "When I want a game, I set up the pieces without plugging the set in. If there is no response, I know Maurice is not present. But often in mid-game, the computer will start to play above its normal level, and I know he stopped by. So I pull out the plug and the game goes on." Maybe it's the fact that the plaster once encased a dead person's head, or that we're viewing the expression of a lifeless face, but whatever the reason, death masks are just downright freaky. But they've been popular throughout history. The practice of making death masks has been around since ancient times, and was common well into the 20th century. People used them as models for sculpting, for forensic purposes, for religious ceremonies, and just simply as mementos. Generally, physicians were in charge of creating the cast, and they made sure to do so within the first few hours of a person's death, before bloating and rigor mortis sets in. So thanks to these doctors who embrace the macabre, we can now see the deathbed faces of Napoleon, President Lincoln, Mary Queen of Scots, Beethoven, and many other historical figures. The most famous mask of all is an unidentified woman who was pulled out of the River Seine in the 1880s. Her death mask became a popular decoration in upper-class French drawing rooms and was later used as a model for the face of CPR dummies. Précision. Consequently, countless people have unknowingly given mouth-to-mouth to the image of a dead French woman. It's kind of fitting that the unknown woman who passed away in the water has saved many, many others from the same fate. The Curse of the Pharaohs, or the Mummy's Curse, is a curse alleged to be cast upon anyone, and I mean anyone, who disturbs the mummy of an ancient Egyptian, especially a pharaoh. Now, this curse, which does not differentiate between thieves and archaeologists, has been claimed to cause bad luck, illness, death, or all of the above. So according to some reports, the tomb of King Tut was guarded by a stone inscribed with the ominous threat: "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king." Undeterred, Egyptologists Howard Carter and Lord Carnarvon opened the tomb to worldwide fanfare in 1922. Shortly thereafter, though, strange fates befell those who had entered the tomb. Our Lord died 4 months later while in Egypt from an infected mosquito bite. Now, he was already in poor health, and a few hours after his death, back in England, his beloved dog Susie let out a yelp and also passed. Another person who entered the tomb, George J. Gould, he died of a fever 6 months after visiting the tomb. Wolf Joel, a South African millionaire, was killed just a couple of months after his visit to the tomb. A.C. Mace, a member of the original archaeological team, was killed by arsenic poisoning, and his personal secretary was found smothered in his bed in 1929. But yes, sure, researchers are out of the dozens of people connected with the opening of the tomb, most people lived long and healthy lives. But not those folks. Yes, some folks have speculated that some of the deaths might be attributed to toxic molds or bacteria. But once again, the curse can take form in whatever way it wants to. Maybe it's just a little more subtle. In the centuries since the discovery of King Tut's tomb in the Valley of the Kings, the pharaoh's gold death mask has become a symbol of ancient Egypt, and celebrated the world over as a masterpiece of ancient art. The mask itself is about 54 centimeters tall, 39.3 centimeters wide, and 49 centimeters deep. It's fashioned from 2 layers of high karat gold, varying from like 1.5 to 3 millimeters in thickness, and weighing 22.6 pounds. X-ray technology conducted in 2007 revealed that the mask is primarily made of copper alloyed 23 karat gold to facilitate the cold working used to shape the mask. Now the surface of the mask is covered in a very thin layer of 2 different alloys of gold, a lighter 18.4 karat shade for the face and neck, and 22.5 karat gold for the rest of the mask. The face represents the pharaoh's standard image, and the same image was found by excavators elsewhere in the tomb, in particular in the guardian statues. He wears a headcloth, topped by the royal insignia of a cobra and vulture, symbolizing Tut's rule of both Lower and Upper Egypt respectively. The ears are pierced to hold earrings, a feature that appears to have been reserved for queens and young royals, and almost all surviving ancient Egyptian works of art. The mask is inlaid with colored glass and gemstones. We're talking quartz, obsidian, turquoise, and a lot more. It has been seen by millions of people, either in Cairo or as part of traveling exhibitions, scrutinized and analyzed. But researchers continue to make new discoveries about its history. For example, a recent analysis of the mask by the Egyptologist Nicholas Reeves suggests that its face section, representing an idealized portrait of the young Tut, actually replaced an earlier one. So if this was the case, the mask actually might have originally belonged to somebody else. Though the most likely candidate is the king who appears to have been King Tut's predecessor. It might have actually been the famous Queen Nefertiti ruling as king. The Maori, who are indigenous to New Zealand, believe that masks as well as other treasures have spirits inside them that are tapu or taboo. So traditional beliefs also dictate that pregnant or menstruating women are taboo as well. So if they too should meet with something else that's taboo, then we got a curse. So this belief is so strong and deeply rooted in the culture that in 2010, the Te Papa Museum in Wellington, New Zealand, which was exhibiting some items of interest, strongly recommended that pregnant and menstruating women should stay away. Now this museum, which is a Maori name that translates as our place, says it was imposing the rule as a condition demanded by the tribes that had provided some of the items. Now the contact between the sacred artifacts and the woman could have created a curse, seeing as they all had the same spirits. I don't know if we had a curse or not. Fingers crossed. According to legend, a mask was recovered at the property of a recently deceased gentleman who lived in Key West, Florida, and was said to have been stolen from an ancient tomb in Egypt decades prior. Folks who held the mask, mostly psychics, reported sensing South or Central American energies. Now, the caretaker of the gentleman's estate said that he heard it was from a tomb, but he had assumed it to be Egyptian rather than from South or Central America. The psychics thought that the pyramid they were seeing was probably an Incan or Mayan tomb instead, and when they held the mask in their hands, it was very cold, but then suddenly became hot. I mean, like, it would numb their hands and send tingles up their arms as far as their shoulder. The most sensitive psychics wouldn't even touch it at all. So while it is clear there is strange energy attached to it, it's also possible that there is a curse. Something not unheard of when it comes to protecting sacred items from thieves or other enemies. And finally for today, the artifacts currently on display at the Fort Leonard Wood Museum are literally the tip of the iceberg compared to the entire collection. The exhibits in question at the John Mahaffey Museum complex are only about 10% of the thousands of historic relics residing and that are safeguarded in the basement of the red brick structure that houses the U.S. Army Engineer, Chemical Corps, and Military Police museums. Now, display items are rotated for conservation and to present fresh exhibits to museum patrons. One such item? A Mickey Mouse gas mask, which is too fragile to even be taken out of its protective case. Therefore, it has to remain cataloged in the basement. So how did this come to be? Well, on January 7th of 1942, a month after Pearl Harbor, the owner of the Sun Rubber Company, along with his assistant, were like, let's sketch this out as a gas mask. It's a little friendly, and it was intended for a younger audience. It was given the look of Mickey Mouse to make it a little less scary looking. And this company went to produce a little over 8,000 of these gas masks, and they were given the E for excellence by the Army in 1944 because of it. The masks were never produced in sufficient quantity to be distributed en masse, and very few would survive the coming years. There's only a couple that exist today. It's pretty neat though. Right, so how was this place cursed? Allow me. So Fort Leonard Wood was deactivated in 1946 after the end of the mass extinction event. Now the military training demands brought about by the world conflict caused this place to spring back to life in August of 1950. Now it's no wonder that with all the soldiers, we're talking over 3 million folks who have passed through the gates of this place in the past 63 plus years, there's been a couple of ghost stories. One in particular dealt with the spectral residents of the small town of Blood, or Beeland for my sakes. It is a little known but established fact that the US government used the right of eminent domain to acquire most of the 71,000 acres to build Fort Leonard Wood. Now, the history of the post may have started with a modest groundbreaking ceremony, but the fact remains that the residents of many small towns and villages were forced to move from their homes to make way for this place. Now, according to local newspaper stories, a soldier named James Clown, yeah, you heard me right, was court-martialed and imprisoned for a year in 1942 after he was found intoxicated and unconscious while on guard duty. Now, he had been assigned to patrol a part of Fort Leonard Wood, which had been the previous location of Beeland. Now, he stated that while he was on duty, he heard several strange noises near his post, and when he went to investigate the source of the eerie noises, he was taken captive by riotous ghosts, whose language he did not understand, and that the band of ghosts forced him to drink hard cider through a straw until he passed out as a result of his inebriated state. Fast forward to 1943, the ghosts come back with a vengeance. This time, a young soldier named Randall Ellsworth suffered the same fate. Rather than court-martialing him, military commanders were like, okay, this place is off limits. It's cursed. And 31 years later, 1974, the ghosts are back again. Same thing this time, but we've got 3 people affected. And they claimed it. Taken hostage by ghosts, hard cider, and so in an article printed by the Gateway Guide in October of that year, an unidentified reporter recounted the experiences of everybody. And when an author went looking for him, she contacted the newspaper and was like, hey, I'd like to know what's going on, but couldn't find it. And that's it for me once again, folks. I've been Alexa, your resident ooky spooky girly. See y'all next time, you lovely spooky people.